What up, what up, what up? And here we go. We are back one more time. So, episode 100 is past, and now we're moving on. We're still doing it, but we're doing it bigger and we're doing it better. So, now today we got something special for you. Of course, we got another guest. We're going to talk NBA since we're in the midst of the NBA finals. And with that, of course, you know who's coming along with me official format podcast hoops analyst Andy Noel. And we have another guest to talk hoops with us. That is NBA veteran, former Cleveland Cavalier, LA Clipper, and Miami Heat, Harold Jameson. So he's going to come along, talk some hoops with us, tell us a little bit about his experiences in the league, playing overseas, and his thoughts on what he is seeing in today's game. That should be a good one. Can't wait to bring it to you on the other side of this. But you know what it is before we get to that, all right? We're going to do the particulars and then we're going to keep it moving and get you to some good stuff. So, first and foremost, thank you for listening. This is episode 101 of the Format Podcast. We've been around for a while. We're going to keep it going. We're going to keep doing our best to bring it to you bigger and better than ever. If you're on YouTube, thank you for hopping in and checking us out. If you got the link or you got it from somewhere else, don't know how you got here, pretty simple. Go open YouTube, type in the search bar The Format Podcast. That's The Format Podcast. We should come right up. So if you're here, do me a favor if you haven't already, click on that subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen and click on that bell so you can be notified whenever new content pops up on the show. All right. Also, at the end of the show, if you liked it, give us that thumbs up. If you didn't like it, don't. Too easy, right? But give us that thumbs up. It kind of helps in the algorithm and everything, keep us moving up. If you like the audio version of the podcast, so you can listen to it while you're doing whatever you're driving, cooking, cleaning, reading, whatever it may be. You need to hear my lovely voice in the background, kicking and giving you that sports knowledge. That's cool because we are available everywhere you receive your podcast, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, whatever it is you use. We're there. Just type in the format podcast. We should come right up. And we are now also available on iHeartRadio. So if you're looking there on iHeartRadio, you're a subscriber to that, go ahead, type in the format podcast, will come right up. If you're on iTunes, do us a favor. Please give us that 5-star rating, helps us move up. And also drop a comment. If you like it, if you hate it, whatever, just drop a comment. Doesn't matter what you say. I love the interaction. It lets me know what? That you are listening. All right. It's always good to know you're listening, and I appreciate that. If you're on social media, catch me on Twitter at Bruce F. A. Hope, at Bruce F. A. Hope. If you're on Instagram, the address is at The Format Podcast, at The Format Podcast. You can also email me directly if you would like to drop a line. That's The Format Podcast at Outlook.com, The Format Podcast at Outlook.com. As I said, it doesn't matter if you tell me, Bruce, you're a genius, Bruce, you're an idiot, you're the greatest guy talking sports ever, you have no idea what you're talking about. That's cool. If you also want to tell me about things you liked, you didn't like, where I was right, where I was wrong, or topics that you'd love for me to discuss, go ahead, shoot me a line, however you want, and we'll definitely try to get that to you. All right. So, with all that said and done, you know what it is. Sit back, relax, and listen up to episode 101 of the format. Joining us today on the Format Podcast is NBA veteran and longtime professional hooper Harold Jameson. Harold, how you doing, man?
I'm good, fellas. How y'all?
Can't complain at all, man. Thank you for taking the time out.
No
Good to be here
problem.
with you. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, and of course, y'all already know we talking hoops, so you know who's here with me, my man Andy Noel. Andy, what's good, bro?
Everything's good, gentlemen. Everything is good. Happy to be here, of course.
Good, good. All right. So Harold, let's take it back a little bit. You played in an earlier generation of the NBA, a very different NBA, obviously. You entered the league in 1999, right? It was a pretty good time in the NBA. A lot of crazy names. You know, you were in the league with at that time. Guys like Kobe Bryant, the late great, obviously. Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, etc. Um, so tell me about how it was to come into the league. You're in a rookie, and you're playing against names like that.
Well, a lot of those guys I played against even before getting to the league.
Hmm.
Uh, but as a rookie, some of them were considered veterans. But for me, it wasn't no thing. For me, it was just, keep doing what you do, big fella. I mean, you've seen it before.
Hmm.
Just go out and do what you do.
Right.
Did you
So
did you play? Sorry, Bruce.
go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask to kind of expand on that a little bit. So you said you had familiarity with some of those guys, right? So you had played AAU with those guys. You said you're from South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm from South
Okay.
Carolina.
Okay. So was that? So did you play against KD and them at KD back in the days in your? I guess before you guys went pro, or not KD, KG. Sorry.
KG.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah. I know he's from that area, right?
yeah.
Hmm.
He's from upstate South Carolina. He went to
Okay.
Malden High School before he went over to Farragut.
Okay.
So the crazy thing is, uh, we were supposed to play together in AAU,
Okay.
Wow.
and he left. We had that team. I don't know if you guys remember uh, names like B.J. Mackey,
Hmm.
uh, Melvin Watson, Jermaine O'Neal.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Uh,
Okay.
Eau
uh,
Claire, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, so I pretty much grew up with those guys.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of those other guys, playing on the AAU circuit and playing in national summer tournaments, I saw those guys 2, 3 years in a row.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right. So you're 6'8". You were a power forward, a traditional power forward, not I guess what they call stretch forward now. You
Right.
used to get down there and bang and score on the low block. I miss those days.
Yeah, I
so
do
so
too.
yeah, yeah. So tell me when you watch the NBA today and you see that power forward position, how do you kind of compare it to your era of the power forwards where we see guys like yourself, Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Rasheed Wallace? How how different is it? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse? Where are you on that?
Man, honestly, I don't think it's a comparison per se,
Mhm.
because the game has changed so much. Um, I mean, it's a totally different game. Like, for me, I feel as though a lot of these fours nowadays, they couldn't make it.
Yeah.
They couldn't make it,
Right.
even though it wasn't that long ago, but the way we played and how we played, they call it old school ball now, you know, and physically, there's probably a handful of guys that I think could have played during that era.
Mhm.
Uh,
Please give us the example. I would love to hear it. And listen, and don't feel like you got to be politically correct, bro. You amongst family, and we
nah,
we
I
and
mean,
all three guys here know what a polka is. So I think we.
well, I mean, one thing about me, I'm going to voice my opinion regardless. I mean, my opinion is my opinion. If you don't like
Please
it,
do.
fine. If you like it, great.
Please
Um,
do.
for an example, physically, um, the big kid from uh, from Denver, LeBron, of course, physically. Um, who else?
When you say the big kid, you mean Jokic, the center?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, I definitely think he could have played.
Okay.
But looking at the game nowadays, I mean,
So do you think he could have played? You think he could have played the same way? You think he could have played the same way? Cause listen, as much as I love his game, I think he's a finesse player. I think he's good, but and he's super skilled.
I agree.
But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he got somebody leaning on him all game long, if he's able to do all of that fancy stuff, all of that, be able to create those passing lanes that are available now with all that open space.
Well, here's the thing, I think he could have been taught to play the way that we play. You know what I'm saying? With his body and his physical makeup. Now, I would say he's as skilled as any of the fours we had back then by far.
Okay.
Which he probably could create some mismatches or some problems, but I think he could have played with us because me for one, and not toot my own horn, but if he would have played when I was playing, listen, I'm beating him all game long. I'm bumping him coming down the court. I mean, he coming to the post. He's getting the elbow in his chest. I mean, I was going to test him right out the gates and see exactly what he was made of. And then when he stepped outside, I mean, that's straight to my advantage because, I had great footwork. I could move. I mean, I guard 3, 4s, and 5s in the league. So, as long as he didn't come down in that post with that height advantage, I mean, he was okay with me. But outside of that, I think that he could have been taught to play the way that we did, man. With his physical makeup. But he is definitely a skill. Like I really love the kid, honestly.
I agree. You think LeBron is bringing the ball up back then? You think LeBron is going to play that position back then?
Man, not as much as he did now. Different generations, especially back then. I mean, we had guys, and not to dismiss anyone nowadays, but we had guys that played what I consider to be real defense. Like you coming up the court, you getting checked, you got mugs in your grill, like
94 feet.
94 feet, exactly. Yeah. At the pro level. So they're gonna test you and see exactly what you made of. And the minute you shy away, game over for you. Game over. But I think he could have bring the ball up and create a lot of mismatches because once you get him in an open floor, I mean you give him a step or two, it's lights out. But when he comes down that lane, it's a totally different story. He might have had his imprint in the floor a couple times.
So my next question was going to be, right, how many times was that lane open, right? Because I don't remember it being open like that.
That's what I said. Somebody like him, and as young as he was when he came in the league, his imprint would have been in a couple floors, rookie or not. I mean, yeah, his imprint would have been left in a couple floors.
I hear that. So, I know to get to the level of playing in the NBA, you have to be a competitor, right? But when you first got there, was there any kind of awe or amazement that you felt seeing these guys up close and personal and obviously playing against them? You mentioned earlier that you played against some of these guys, at earlier levels and whatnot, but like a lot of people tell the stories like when first time they got I think Allen Iverson told the story the first time he was on the court with Michael Jordan, and he was like, he just had an aura around him. It was like, did you ever have those kind of moments where you experienced that playing against certain guys?
Well, there was a couple guys, one being MJ, and quick funny story, this is when he was with Washington, and what a lot of people forget is that Mike still averaged 23 points a game playing with Washington. So he wasn't doing everything he was doing a couple years before, but Mike was still getting buckets. So he's shooting a free throw, and we were on the free throw line, and I'm just sitting there like, holy crap, I'm in the game. I'm like, like this is like Jesus, So
Yeah.
so he shoots the free throw, and I'm still sitting there looking at him, like literally sitting there looking at him. So he's running back down the end of the court, and I'm still sitting there looking at him. Like I didn't move, dude. Like I did not move. And Alvin Gentry was the coach then, and they called me Joe Mo. He was like, Joe Mo. And then I snapped out of it, man. I was like, holy crap, dude. Like, I'm just sitting on the free throw line. Everybody's moving. MJ's going back down the court. Right. And I'm just sitting there looking at the dude, man. I was like, oh, man. But the other thing is, my rookie year, I was down in Miami. Mm-hmm. So just to see some of those guys with the work ethic that they had, for instance, I had a veteran crew. And in my mind, I'm like, shit, I'm never going to play in this mug. But I had Lonzo Mourning, PJ Brown, Dan Marley, Tim Hardaway, Jamal Mashburn.
Mm-hmm. So you were there. You were there during that Knicks fight.
Oh, man. It was 2 years in a row. Like, actually, it was 3 years in a row. I think we saw them in the playoffs. But, I mean, we could never get past them. Like, it was freaking crazy.
You were there on that Allen Houston lucky shot, weren't you?
Oh man, dude, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But, just especially Zoe, just seeing those guys' work ethic, and then I was at summer, I was in San Antonio, didn't sign with him, but seeing Tim Duncan come in every day, and he's doing cardio, he's shooting, and this is all in the off season, and I was just amazed at those guys' work ethic, man.
Mm-hmm. So if I could ask you a question about that, right? So I've heard you hear it a lot of times, right? In terms of people say that some of these guys, they teach you how to be a professional, right? And so as a fan, right, as a guy standing on the outside looking in, we can only imagine what that looks like. And you just said, right, the work ethic, but break that down, right? So what does that look like? So you're a rookie, right? You had whatever work ethic you had that got you to that point. But what is the gap between what you walked in with versus what these guys were doing, and how to, and what did you need to do to close that gap? Because a lot of times you hear, right, this guy's a professional, like, yo, bro, you dribble a rock. Right. At the end of the day, like, what does that even look like? But getting an understanding of, walking us through, right, and us and our audience through what that actually looks like, that'd be helpful.
Well, first of all, coming out of college with my background, I mean, I was considered a workhorse, but the level of consistency that these guys do it at, I mean, that was the gap that I had to close.
Okay.
Like you said, they teach you how to be a professional, and that's all the way across the board. Taking care of your body, doing what you need to do beforehand, getting in early, leaving late. And they did that day in and day out, man. It was like no days off. So for me, I had to kind of reprogram myself, not just being happy to where I made it, but, pretty much to be not content, but to know that I'm there and this is what it takes to stay, or this is what it takes, to even go to the next level. Because I think that's what it's about. A lot of guys make it and they're content with that. They're happy with that because, they think that because they made it, they're going to be there for the long haul. And that's not true.
Okay. So you were, as we mentioned, you were power forward. So you would have had to match up against some of the names we mentioned earlier, your Rasheed Wallace's, your Kevin Garnett's, your Tim Duncan's, I guess a little later in his career, Derek Coleman's. Who would you say was the toughest matchup for you, the hardest guard, the hardest to guard for you at the power forward position?
Man, I played 4 and a little bit of the 5. So for me, I think it was Tim, because he was just so skilled and so smart, man. Like Tim was a problem. Tim was a problem. His length, his footwork, and like I said, his smarts. Like he was always a tough matchup for me. Anytime I played him.
Did he talk a lot?
No, not at all.
Right.
Probably made it worse, huh? Probably made it worse.
He was he was literally the quiet assassin. Like, he will give you buckets at the bucket at the bucket, and you just sit there like, holy crap. Like, he doesn't miss, the kiss off the glass, getting into the lane, and the little baby hook, and then he could step out, and drain the J. Another tough matchup for me was Chris Webber. Shit. Webb was a problem, and that's when he was still in SAC. So yeah, he was a real problem. But I would say those two for me did it. And then, third for me was Karl Malone. But I could battle with Karl. Karl was still in Utah. They were still, doing their thing, him and Stockton and everybody else. But Tim and C. Webb.
You know what's funny about Karl Malone? You saying Karl Malone, right? I remember when 20 years ago, probably, I called one of my boys. I was like, I'm watching Utah Jazz play. And I just realized I've never seen Karl Malone make an offensive move. I'm like, does Karl Malone have any moves? He's like, nah, bro. He said he get to the spot, though. I said, that's incredible. I said, I'm watching this dude. I'm like, I've been watching, I would venture to say, most of his career. And 15 years later, I'm like, hey, this dude ain't really got no moves. Like, oh.
You can't score 36,000 points with no moves, though. He had to be doing something.
But he didn't have any moves. A lot of what he was doing was essentially, like, I never saw Karl Malone drop step. Like, I've never seen him do an up and under and anything like that. It's like so much of what he was doing. He developed the jump shot later on.
Yeah, his mid-range got crazy.
Yeah, but so much of that was essentially, listen, he's just going to get to his spot, and the ball's going to be waiting for him. He's going to do what he does. He's going to finish. Versus the other guys that you mentioned, like, I always loved C. Webb. But Tim Duncan, like, I watched a game with Tim Duncan when he was at Wake Forest, and nobody even knew, like, you couldn't even tell back then what he was going to be, but he was a load even at Wake Forest, though.
He was, but what was funny about that, I distinctly remember, because I grew up in ACC country, he used to get it handed to him by Joe Smith and Rasheed Wallace. Those dudes used to go at Tim Duncan in college.
Yeah.
So then to watch him come out and, thoroughly dominate, it's like, whoa, how'd this go? I guess some dudes' games are just better suited for the pros, I guess.
That's what it boils down to, right? And sometimes people don't get that. Like, there is a difference between playing professional ball and playing at the college level and playing high school ball and AAU ball. That's why some guys wash out, right? Some guys who look great in college, but they wash out.
But in Tim's defense too, those guys had a couple years on Tim.
Yeah, they were older than him too.
That's
You're
true,
right.
yeah.
You're right. You're right.
So, and then plus back then, the ACC was like the NBA of basketball. The ACC was, So it wasn't no easy matchups. You got teams that's finishing 7, 8, 9, or 6 through 9 in the ACC back then that could have went somewhere and finished, top of the league. So the competition was stiff, man, night in and night out.
No, you're right. You're right about that.
So
you're right about that.
Staying on Tim Duncan for one more question, kind of let's compare him. Let's juxtapose him with, I guess, his polar opposite, Kevin Garnett. We've seen Kevin Garnett. He looks like a crazy man on the floor. Kind of. How do you compare those two in terms of play? You said Tim Duncan never said anything. We know Kevin Garnett was always frothing at the mouth, cursing and screaming and going nuts. Kind of tell us a little bit about what it was like on the floor with KG.
Man, listen, KG would talk from jump ball to the buzzer. The whole freaking game. But meanwhile, you was gonna get that work. I mean, he was talking, but you was gonna get that work. 20 and 10, and then he was gonna do some of everything else. Like what a lot of people didn't realize, for his size and his frame, like KG wanted all the smoke. Like not only did he talk it, but he wanted all the smoke. Like it didn't matter who it was. Like I mean, he just had that mentality, man. Whereas Tim, you didn't know if he wanted all the smoke or not. But at the end of the game, you was like, I guess he did.
Yeah.
What was I again, we've heard about KG's talking. What's he talking about all game long?
Man. He's just talking about everything, dude. I mean, if KG knew anything personal about you, he was gonna be in your face, he was gonna be in your ear, like he was gonna let you have it. I mean, kind of like Dennis Rodman, like whatever advantage he could get on you, however he could take you out of your game. I mean, he was gonna talk smack. I mean, he's gonna talk to you all night long. But it's just certain things you'd be like, hold on, like you would be ready to throw them things with KG with some of the stuff he was saying, man.
Right.
Because I remember, even though we played together, and then we went to the Nike camp together when they had the Nike camp back then, and my first time playing against him in the league, he calling me young fella. I'm like, we're the same age, like we played against each other. Like right. Like you about to get this work tonight. Watch me. I'm like, oh. Like, all right. Well, you know what? Let's take it in the post then. I mean, I wasn't backing down from nobody. I'm like,
sure.
Okay, let's go. But
right.
he was just that type of dude, man. But it was all in fun, actually. Because after the game, I mean, cool dude, just real down to earth, man. Good dude.
So underrated big man who was one of your teammates with the Clippers, Elton Brand. How good was Elton Brand? Because that guy, he did a lot of work but didn't get a lot of credit. How good was he?
Elton was great. I felt like a good part of his career, he got snubbed for a lot of things. And, as the league started to change and his type of play wasn't looked at as, spectacular.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And with that being said, I think the league did him a disjustice because, he was just another workhorse and he would just get it done. I mean, nonstop, and people knew it, like you knew you was going to get that work from PB no matter what. The only way you wasn't is if, your game plan was to keep him, outside of that paint or anywhere close to the paint. And that was hard to do for him because then, he's going to eat glass, he's going to do whatever he has to do, man. But definitely underrated.
Got you. So besides playing in the NBA, you spent a lot of time playing professional ball overseas as well. What was that experience like? I know you played in a number of leagues, a number of countries, and just how we always talk about obviously the NBA being the highest level of basketball in the world, but how different is it playing overseas as compared to the NBA, and how big is the talent gap between those players? And because we're seeing a lot of guys from Europe coming over, and they're having a much less difficult time adjusting to playing in the NBA than it was in the past. For instance, we watched guys like Vlade Divac and the late great Drazen Petrovic and well, Arvidas got here when he was old, but guys like that who were really outstanding European, Tony Kukoc, Dino Raja, outstanding European players who came over here and really, got, for lack of a better word, comeuppance. They had to eat some humble pie before they could get acclimated to the NBA game and be able to really kind of show what they could do. How big is the talent gap between the NBA and overseas?
Well, I mean, now it's not that big, but back
Mhm.
then, like when I first got in the league and when I first went to Europe, I mean, it was a big gap just because of the way the game was taught. Um, and I had to make some adjustments, because except for countries like Greece and a lot of the countries in Eastern Europe, it was a more physical style of play, similar to that of the NBA. However, the majority of Europe, and I think as the NBA started traveling and going over to Europe more, I honestly believe, this is part of the reason why they started switching the game up because uh, from an early age, their bigs, all they did was shoot the ball. So now these stretch fours and these big
Mhm.
men now, I mean, they was doing that for years. So being as though the NBA started to change, now, I think there's still a talent gap, but as far as the game is concerned, these guys get acclimated very quickly or right out the gate just because of the fact that, they've been playing that way for a while, especially the big men, especially the big men over there. And for me, you know, I was used to banging in the post, occasionally up and down the floor, beating people up and down the floor because of my speed. But I was guarded on the perimeter a whole lot, guarded some fours and fives, you know. And I think, like, for instance, I don't know if you remember the guy, but he played in Italy and I played against him. Bargnani, he played in Toronto,
Mhm.
big kid,
Yeah. Yep.
and I think, that's when things started to change and they started to see, like, okay, these big guys can shoot, they can stretch the
Okay.
floor, which creates more spacing in the NBA, and now it's harder to
Mhm.
guard,
Yep,
Mhm.
yep.
you know? Um, and I honestly believe in my heart, it wasn't just a change, to say this, that, or the third. It was the way that, they saw a lot of Europeans playing and the NBA perfected it.
Mhm. So you mentioned Andrea Bargnani. That made me think of another European guy who was a superstar, but is now known as one of the biggest busts in draft history. Is Darko Milicic. Did you have a chance to play against Darko in Europe? Because from what I've heard over there, the guy was absolutely amazing.
I didn't play against Darko, but of course, I saw what he was doing.
Hmm.
And like you said, I mean, he was freaking killing.
Okay.
I
Really?
mean,
Wow. Okay.
he was unstoppable. And I tell you, another guy, he had a pretty good career. Um, that was freaking unbelievable. Was Andre Kirilenko, AK-47.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, he came and once he got his feet wet, it was
Hmm.
curtains.
Yeah. Yep.
But he was doing that in Europe. I mean, dude had billboards and all type of crap over
Really?
there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
AK. Yeah. I think he played for Cheska Moscow for a little while.
exactly.
Yep.
And
And
and Cheska was winning um,
hmm.
crazy championships. I
Yep.
mean, year after year, they was in the if if Cheska wasn't winning it, they were definitely in the finals or right
Hmm.
before the finals almost every year because I mean, they had guys over there. I mean, they had teams at some point in time that could beat NBA teams easily.
Wow.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I mean, they just had the whole package. You know, they had guards, they had shooters. You know, they had people like Kirilenko who could slash. You know, Trajan Langdon. I mean, they was getting it in.
Right, right. So one of the countries you mentioned when you were talking about some of your different stops, you mentioned Greece. So of course that brings me to one of the big names in the NBA Finals this year, and one of the big names in the NBA over the last few seasons, two-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak. And Andy and I go back and forth on his worth, his skill, his how important he is. Um, as a power forward, tell me where you are on Giannis. He's definitely a flawed player skill wise, but he's all effort. He's developed a lot in his career, both in his body and his game. What do you see as his ceiling as a player? And I say, how much more do you think he's able to add to his offensive toolkit? You know he's going
Oh
to put
man,
the work in, but how far do you think he can go before he maxes out what he's actually capable of doing as a player?
honestly, I don't think that uh, he's nowhere uh, near his potential. Honestly, um, the way I see him, um, yes, he's improved, but I think he has so much more room for growth. I mean, I think he's great at what he does, but as far as skill wise and uh, just working on his game and becoming even better, he could be, for instance, you know, uh, his decision making is questionable to me at times.
Hmm.
Um, he doesn't have a consistent shot. Uh,
Obviously, right.
you know, I honestly think that uh, physically, I think that he can, you know, be a little bigger or put on a few pounds, which I think would help him. Um, and this is just my opinion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is just
Sure.
my opinion. But as far as his skill set, I mean, the dude is too talented not to be more skilled. And um, I think that, again, this is my opinion. I think that over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, I think that you'll see a different player if he continues to work.
Now, so my next question is, right? How old is Giannis again? 20 what?
Got to be about 27, I think.
Is he
So just
27?
getting into his prime.
Give
He
or
came
take.
at 19, I believe. He's been in the league
Yeah,
8
Okay.
years. 27 sounds
yeah,
about right.
give or
So
take.
in your experience, do you see there still being enough time to be able to add that skill level? Because like you said, right, you played for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always joke around about when I used to play, and when I realized that I had to have my hands up for passes all the time, the guy I used to play with would pop me in the head with the ball. And and he's like, I'm like, yo, what are you doing? He says, your hands need to be ready at all times. I was like, I didn't know you were passing it to me. He's like, you got to be ready at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So I use that as an example, right? Because I've seen Giannis in a couple of occasions where it's like he doesn't know the ball is coming, right? And he'll bobble it, right? And it's like, to me, that's not something you can actually learn. That's something that becomes second nature to you as a result of playing. So when you look at him, or like an Embiid who've only been playing 11, 12 years, and they're playing against other guys who have been playing, right, for for maybe 5 to 10 years longer. There's a gap between that, right? So I think when I look at a Giannis, right, and I look at the improvements that he made, we say, wow, what he gotten so much better. And that's almost like, okay, well, now he's at the basic level, right? So now that he's got the basics, now he's got to add on to those basics when he
Right.
starts where it starts becoming sexy, right? And I'm like, how much time does he really have between the time that he gets to a fundamental level and the time he's actually, I wouldn't even say master level. I would say like an intermediate level where it's like, okay, he's got this skill set and he's got these things down. Because a lot of times I see it as mechanical. Right? I see him when he's playing. Like the other day, he was playing. He had a move against what's the center's Aiton, and he's dribbling past Aiton. Aiton is standing in the baseline, and he bumps him out the way, and they and he dunks it. I'm like, that's an offensive foul, right? Because the guy's he's established there, right? He's established there, stand there, and he basically moved him out the way. I think in this current NBA, where athleticism dominates and skill is almost secondary, and nobody really cares about how you got there, I think he'll thrive. But I've been hearing like they're actually going to be, one of my buddies said that they're going to be putting mechanisms in place to kind of slow that down, to not allow the offense to have such advantages. And if they start calling the offensive foul, him and LeBron specifically are in trouble.
And Harden,
right? And Harden as well, right? Yeah, you know what? Harden pushes off as well. Those two are definitely in trouble. I think when Bruce says we argue, I don't necessarily say we argue. I think Bruce is an optimist, right? So Bruce is saying that he's like, yeah, you know what? He's made such improvements. I'm like, great. What you're looking at though is like, okay, if we're looking at a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, this dude just got to level 3, right? and it's like, how much space does he actually have given where he is in his career to grow, right? They had that scare the other day when he got hurt. If that dude gets hurt, he's in trouble, right? Because he doesn't have anything else to go to but athleticism.
So Andy, real quick, and Harold, kind of what I've noticed with Giannis, like we know over the last couple of years, the big thing, the buzz term has been build the wall in terms of stopping him in the playoffs, build the wall to stop him from getting to the rim, the way he likes to. Now, what I've noticed this year, I was actually surprised because as a result of, our discussions, I've been watching him more closely in terms of his actual skill set. Now, of course, no one's ever going to mistake him for Kevin Durant. However, I think maybe Giannis doesn't quite get the credit he deserves for what he can do skill-wise in terms of I'm watching him and I'm like, this guy actually has a better handle than we think he does. Like when a big comes out to guard him, he's putting it on the floor, crossing over that big and going right past him with ease. So he's got a better handle than people think. And I actually saw him pull out I don't want to use the name Dirk, but the one-legged fadeaway jump shot. Like I've seen him do that a few times this playoffs, and I'm like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? I've never seen that before. And he knocked it down a few times. I'm like, okay, so I get your point, Andy, because really 8 years in, you're entering your prime. So what do you have, 3, maybe 4 years of that before you start the downturn? How much more time do you have to max out your toolkit? So I get it. I'm with you. I just think that maybe we don't give him quite the credit we should for the offensive tools that he does have.
No, I mean, he has some tools. And what I'm thinking is, in today's game, a lot of these kids are going to play a lot longer than we did back then just because of the way the game is played. However, Andy said something that's going to be vital as well because the league is thinking about going back maybe towards the old style of basketball where, like you said, the offense doesn't have as great an advantage. But for right now, because of the fact that the league is the way that it is, this is why I said that, Giannis have 2 to 3 years, to really max out as a player and get to that point where, he's really that superstar because he is a superstar in the making. And, my opinion is, because the league is not as physical, then he has more time, especially body-wise, because once your body starts to get tired, I don't care how much you work, what you do, I mean, it's only so much you're going to add, especially playing at that level and that many games. So because
Good
the way
point.
the style of the NBA is now, yes, he has some time. But if this was, back during my era, right now at 8 years,
Right.
that's yeah.
So
That's
let
gonna
me
be
tell.
tough.
I told Bruce. I said if you put him back in that era, he's Bo Outlaw.
That's a
Yeah.
terrible thing to say. Oh my
Right.
God.
Seriously.
See, you see.
Bo Outlaw couldn't do the things Giannis could do, man.
We don't know.
I mean, skill wise,
we don't know.
But skill wise, he's definitely more skilled than both. But I think what Andy is saying that, if he was put on some of the teams back then, he would be that type of role player or that type of player for that team.
Right.
Because there was no way in hell this kid there was no way in hell he would be able to do the things that he do.
Yep.
Or
they're not running the offense through him back then. No way.
Not at all.
Now, so I made a point in a club room chat the other day. I made a point. I said, we are now at the point where the game has been reversed. So we get out of the way for the athletes now, when everybody shoots to the corners and wait for the athletes to create. Back in the days, like, okay, we got to find a way to get this dude out of the way for the skill players to get off. And it's, I don't know what that's going to look like if these offensive rules do happen. Excuse me. If these offensive changes do happen, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm imagining that the NBA, that there's going to be at least there's going to be some challenges that some of these guys face. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on that. It's going to be a lot of adjusting for these guys in this day and age. Because everything, the NBA is, has been a one-on-one type of league. If you can't defend one-on-one, then you're done. But the adjustments, man, like, if they were to go back somewhat to that style, it would be interesting for me to see how teams adjust, and more importantly, how, a lot of these skill players adjust as well, getting, a couple more guys involved, and, not having, so much room to create stuff. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they thrive, man.
I don't think they're going to allow it to go back too far. That's going to be too big a slide, because you're looking at it, and one of the NBA's biggest draws nowadays are all these high scoring games and the tremendous pace of play. I mean, a couple of years ago, Adam Silver literally said it. These rules changes that we have implemented are having the desired effect in terms of freeing up offenses and allowing more high scoring games. He said it to the media. So, they love it. They have a fan base they've marketed the game a certain way to, and I don't know that fan base would be able to stand, games that are, 95-90 or, 88-84. Like, to us, those games were fantastic because you knew that if you got off in a game like that, you earned it, right? It wasn't a super highway to the lane after you beat your first guy. It wasn't, 4 out. So teams taking 33 pointers a game. That wasn't how it was. You actually had to run real innovative offense, and every team wasn't doing some variation of the pick and roll. So it's a totally different game now, and kudos to the NBA. They've marketed it extremely well. The next generation loves it. They knew what they were doing, so credit there.
Yep.
So speaking to that we were just discussing, kind of the difference in the way the game was played versus the way it is played, and possible changes and how far back it could go, or et cetera, et cetera. We know that in the last 20 years, it's changed a ton. We keep hearing that today's players are more skilled than ever before. I personally disagree with that, because I feel like in a lot of cases they gave up one skill for another. Just because guys shoot the three better on the whole in the league does not mean today's players are more skilled. What's your take on that? Do you believe that today's players are more skilled, as someone who played in the NBA and overseas and was a professional for a long time?
I think overall, Uh, I think that the average player is more skilled just because of the fact that that's all they're teaching now. Everything is skill, 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 skill. No matter what position or whatever it is, everything has to be skilled, and that's the way the game has transformed. So on an average, yes, I think that they're more skilled. However, the weakness of a lot of this skill stuff is that if you really watch the game and you watch a lot of these young players now, and you're not amazed by the oohs and ahs and stuff that they do, a lot of them lack fundamentals.
Did
like
you tap
real
Andy's phone,
basketball.
Harold?
Say that
Did
again?
you tap Andy's phone? We talked
Man,
about this.
I promise you I didn't. But so
maybe we're at the end of this, we're gonna get your number and put you on a group text. So
right.
we can be having these conversations.
Absolutely.
But go ahead, continue, please.
I mean, and again, just the last topic we were talking about, that's what's going to be interesting to me, even if the league, quote unquote, backslides a little bit, it's going to be interesting for me to see, because everything is being taught skill, and just basketball fundamentals, even for big men. Like, you don't see a lot of the big men with footwork and big men moves. I mean, now everything is catch, face up, shoot. And there's very few people or big men in the league right now. You can put the ball in the post and be like, listen, go get me a bucket, big fella, or make a move and get your own shot. It's like a lost art, because that's the way the game is. Not taking anything away from anyone, but I mean, I get it. You do what you do to get paid, or do what you do, to keep your job. But man, just basketball fundamentals is lost.
And it's crazy because sorry, Andy.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was reading the analytics say that the back to the basket post up is now the worst shot in basketball, which tells me how stupid I am, because apparently I can't figure out how being closer to the basket is a worse shot than being further from it in terms of the back to the basket post up versus the corner three. I just don't get it, but hey, that's me. I think a big part of what you were mentioning too, Harold, about these bigs who, for the most part, have an inability to get the ball down low, and you tell them, hey, get a bucket. One, they're not training that way, they're not practicing that, and two, most of these point guards in today's game can't make a post entry pass, and that astounds me. But if it's not something you're constantly doing or being trained to do, that skill is not going to be there. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking also, right? Harold, not sure how much of the Sixers series that you caught against with them against the Hawks, but I was telling Bruce that I said Embiid is more of a flawed player than I thought he was, and I actually thought he was much better. My problem with him is, although he has a wide array of skills, he's situationally unaware. He has no idea where he is on the floor at a given time, right? This dude's trying to take people off the dribble from the 3-point line, and he's going up against a 1-4 defense. So there's everybody waiting at the baseline for him. And I'm like, wait, no coach ever told you that you don't do that? And he's getting the ball picked away from him, not only once, not twice. It's like over and over. So, but you can see offensively, right? Offensively, he's a skilled player. He has it all. But he's one of those guys where he has so many tools, he has no idea when and when not to use them. Because in my opinion, he could average 25 points a game easily by just flashing in the post and giving a hook over either shoulder, right? Easily, right? Who's going to stop him, right? like literally power dribble, put your shoulder into the dude, hook shot, easy, right?
And he has
either that. or you going to the foul line, right? But it's like you want to see him. He wants to shoot 3-pointers. He wants to jab and do all the rest of that stuff. And by the way, he's always getting knee injuries. It's almost like these guys, these bigger dudes, to the point that you just made. I don't even know if they're more skilled. I'm using Bruce's analogy. They just switched one skill out for another skill. So instead of having footwork and post move, they now have a dribble and 3-point shot, right? So it's like instead of going to what's more efficient, they're going with what's more sexy. And it's like, okay, that's why you got AD getting hurt all the time. AD thinks he's a guard. Like, bro, you 7 feet, right? You a 7-footer trying to act like you 6'2". And that's another reason why that's another issue with today's game, right? All of these injuries happening because you guys are doing stuff that's just completely inefficient. You're playing the game fast, more plays, more speed, more pounding, and oh wow, we're playing too many games. No, y'all playing stupid.
Right. And like, listen, I totally agree with you, Andy. And people getting hurt is part of the game, but you tell me one big man in the league, stretch forward, whatever, that haven't had a knee injury or an injury to his lower extremities. That's been healthy the entire season. Give me one.
None of them.
Exactly. Big guys are not made for all this skill stuff. I don't care how thin they are. I mean, big guys are not made for it.
Agreed.
Our bodies are not made for it.
Yep.
And even like if you think about it, we can use Tim Duncan for example. He was skilled, but not in the way that he's teaching these big guys to be skilled. He was skilled because his array of things that he could do, the kiss off the glass, the jump hook, it's a totally different skill set. So, you never seen a lot of big guys back then that had ACLs and all this stuff going on because.
Good point.
Good point. The style preserved their body. All this skill stuff, nah, man. Like our bodies are not made for that.
Fair enough. So let's go ahead, Andy.
I was gonna say, you think about even that, right? Having to close out from the paint out to the 3-point line. You know what kind of beating up that puts on your body, right? Especially like your Rudy Gobert. Come on, man.
Right. So let's bring it forward and talk about the playoffs this year. So we've seen a ton of injuries. That's been one of the biggest storylines in the playoffs, and that's played a big role in terms of who has made it to the finals. Now, for me, it doesn't play quite as big a role because every champion has always had the benefit of taking advantage of injuries to their opposition. But do you feel like that takes anything away from either team's run to the finals for you?
I'm sorry, say it again, Bruce. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good. No, I was saying that in this year's playoff, we've seen a ton of injuries, and that's obviously played a huge role in terms of who we have in the finals. And for you, does that take away from either team's run to the championship round? Because we've almost, for the most part, every champion at some point takes advantage of injuries for another team. Does that take anything away from this run of the Bucks or the Suns to you?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, especially when, it's a key player. I mean, do still play the game, to win, of course. But I mean, that morale, that chemistry, having that guy in the lineup, it changes things. I mean, it changes the whole game plan. So, I mean, now you got to make, I won't say crazy adjustments, but, you got to adjust your offense and your defense, just to fit, not what the other team is doing, but, just to fit what it is that you need to do on both ends of the floor. And honestly, I want CP to get a ring. So I had the Suns in 5. But because of injuries, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know now. I mean, I think it's really going to be a series.
That's funny. I want Giannis to get the ring, not because I have a problem with CP3, but because I love the fact that, he stayed with his team, didn't run off and do the super team thing when he could have. And, it would be huge for a small market franchise, and to show that you can still do it the old way without all this teaming up stuff. So, well, we'll see what happens.
Like I said earlier, Bruce is the optimist and he loves a story.
I'm a writer. I'm a journalist.
He
What do you want me to
loves
say?
the story. He's like, bro, listen, I want Giannis to lose. I want Giannis to lose.
There you go.
I want CP3 to win a ring, and and I'm okay with it being over in 6.
Well, CP3 winning a ring is also a story. So clearly you like a story as well.
No, the story's gonna be Giannis didn't win.
That's not gonna be the story, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, it is.
But I mean, I would like to see Giannis get a ring at some point. But I think it's CP time, man. I personally like the dude. I like what he does, how he does it. And again, that's just my opinion. And I think that at this point in his career, he deserves it. And besides, Giannis still has time. So CP time is
to be honest with you, I think if they don't win it this year, I don't know if they do. I don't know when they do it. I think a fully healthy Brooklyn team is gonna blow them off the floor, and they don't have the cap space. They don't have the cap space to make any adjustments. And I think if Philly gets it right, Philly going to be a problem for them too. So if you look at this run this year, they ain't really play anybody, right? They beat teams that were broken down, right? Even if Kyrie plays, they lose, right? So unless they get hurt next year, unless all these teams get hurt again next year, this is really their one moment. They're not beating anybody next year, right? They're not going to beat those teams.
Here's the thing I say about Milwaukee. They're two great role players away from being real competitive.
Agreed.
Like I said, they don't have a lot of room, but they need some guys that's just going to be dogs. And I think that if they can bring in a couple mid-level guys that just have that mentality and bring that mentality to that team, I think that you'll see a different team.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
and, we'll go ahead and we'll leave it right there. Harold, man, thank you so much for coming in and dropping knowledge and giving us a little bit about your experience as a pro hooper, as an NBA player. We love to hear that kind of thing. And thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce. I really enjoyed being on, man, having this chat. And y'all gotta add me to these group chats. So
without a doubt.
Oh, you are, yeah, you gonna get in? Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
and here's be prepared for some laughter.
Right. Oh, we
and some hot talk.
there, man.
Some hot talk. This is cool, man.
Good.
Thanks a lot, bro. Thanks a lot.
I mean, I've had that heat my whole life, so hey, I want all the smoke. Let's get it.
Now this is cool, bro. This is cool. Thank you for joining us. Really cool.
All right.
I appreciate
Thanks a lot,
bro.
fellas.
Thank y'all for having me, man.
Take care now.
Good stuff. Good stuff.